States, which has been a laggard, we see a new mobilization, a new level of awareness. 26 laws, 26 not laws, I apologize, 26 important pieces of legislation introduced into Congress just over the past year, which is a record in this field in the United States, which has, as I said, been slow to come to this. Very important new law getting on the books and being discussed in Britain, in the UK. So we have a lot that's happening. We have populations, people, folks like you and me, feeling mobilized all around the world. Everywhere that I traveled over the past year and a half, I went out to talk about my book, and I thought I'd be back in 3 weeks, and I came home 14 months later. And instead of diminishing the people who came to this discussion, the numbers grew. 1,000 people in the room, sometimes every day, sometimes twice a day. Everybody that I spoke with, they said the same things. We're worried about democracy. We're worried about freedom. We're worried about autonomy. We're worried about the future. We're worried about manipulation. We're worried about control. We are mobilized. I am persuaded of that. Every single attitude survey of any scale shows the same thing. Whenever people have a choice, we hate these operations. We're looking for ways to hide from them. This is not what we choose. So, looked at from this perspective, surveillance capitalism is a massive market failure. It succeeds because we've gotten to a point where there are no alternatives. Everything that we try to do forces us to march through surveillance capitalism supply chains. Whether we're interfacing with our children's schooling, now more than ever, whether we're interfacing with our health data, now more than ever, whether we're just trying to get online to make plans with friends and family for dinner or to have a conversation. Everything we do forces us to march through their supply chains. So we have no alternatives. We don't understand well what they're doing. And they've told us that all of this is an inevitable, they've told us that all of this is an inevitable consequence of technology, that their hands are tied, there's nothing they can do. So, we have this term in English, I don't know if you're using it in Spain, we call it gaslighting. The idea that, they've mastered rhetoric to really confuse us and misdirect our understanding in a way that it gets very, very disorienting. The bottom line is all of this can be fixed, but it's going to take us, our lawmakers, and our democracies to fix it.
Usted expresa mucha preocupación, algo que es muy preocupante, que es el mundo de los adolescentes, que sí que está ya atrapado, completamente atrapado, este nuevo universo que está usted contando y que tiene muchas ventajas y muchísimos inconvenientes. A partir sobre todo de dos cosas, el temor a perderse algo, y la necesidad de estar siempre siendo reconocido por los demás, tener muchos likes, ser muy querido por los demás, está convirtiendo a nuestros adolescentes en seres especialmente manipulables. Y el otro día en una serie documental en la que usted participa, por cierto, se llama The Social Dilemma, en el cual se muestra un gráfico que me hizo mucha impresión. El número de suicidios de adolescentes, una cosa escandalosa. En los últimos 6 o 7 años se ha multiplicado como por 200 el número de suicidios en adolescentes por no ser suficientemente queridos, o no tener suficientes likes, o no siendo suficiente guapo o suficiente guapa. Ese universo da más miedo, ¿no, señorita Siupo? Porque están ya viviendo atrapados, atrapados. ¿Eh?
Yes.
Y ese es especialmente vulnerable, ¿no?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. You're absolutely right. I am very concerned about our young people because adolescence and young adulthood, is a very vulnerable time because when we come into adolescence without a developed sense of self, and the way we know who we are when we're younger, and just about anybody can think back to an earlier time in life and identify with what I'm about to say. The way we know ourselves when we're younger is through our reflection in another person's eyes. So, we want to be accepted and we want to be recognized. We want to be included in the group because it's only through how we see ourselves in the other's eyes that we feel alive. Well, don't forget that Facebook was invented by some boys. Facebook was invented essentially by adolescents, young boys at university who were very much in this kind of adolescent mentality, where if you're 14 or 15 or 16 or 17, depending on somewhat whether you're a boy or girl, to be honest. We won't go into that. But also, just your personality and a bunch of other things. But how fast you're developing, and that's a function of many different random things in life. But anyway, these young people who invented Facebook, they were absolutely in the heart of this mentality. Like, what is the good? The good is, other people like you. What is the good? Other people check out your face and they think you're cute and they want to know you. This adolescent mentality was institutionalized in the structure of Facebook. And when they created the like, it made it even worse, because then you have a continuous metric of whether or not, they like me. If they like me, I exist, right? It's this very existential kind of Shakespearean problem. If they don't like me, who am I? Because the lights have gone out. There's no mirror. There's no illumination. It's a dark room. If they don't like me, I can't see myself. Now, young people suffer with this. You put up a post and you can't tear yourself away until you see if it's starting to collect likes. You put up a picture, you can't tear yourself away until you see if it's starting to get recognition. People suffer with this. Young people suffer with this. Now, let's go back to what we talked about before, economies of action, subliminal cues, unconscious forms of interpersonal comparison, ways of rewarding and punishing in real time. When you live in the digital milieu, in the digital surround, and by the way, this whole digital architecture is what I refer to as not just a big brother who's up there and has a political motivation to survey us and make us do what he wants us to do. I call this big other. I call this digital architecture that's all around us big other, not big brother. Big other is not totalitarian. Big other does not want to drag us off to the gulag or the camp. Big other wants one thing only. Big other wants our data. Big other wants to grab everything from our experience, to turn it into data, to send it into the pipes and the and the factory and the sales and the markets. That's big other. Now our children are captured in this architecture of big other. Big other wants their data, right? So this brings us right down to Facebook today. What are we reading in the headlines every day, especially when we're talking about politics and the upcoming elections in the United States, for example? What we're seeing is that what's on Facebook gets more and more violent, more and more controversial, more and more outrageous. Why is that? Well, that's not being done by people, that's being done by algorithms. Remember that algorithmic hub and the 6 million predictions per second and the trillions of data points coming in to help build those algorithms? So what those trillions of data points are showing is that there's all these volumes of different kinds of data that are occurring, coming into the Facebook supply chains. And what the predictions say is that more people will look at stuff that's violent, more people will look at stuff that's full of rage, more people will look at stuff that's mean, than will look at stuff that's nice, stuff that's kind, stuff that is calm, stuff that is peaceful. So the algorithms are constantly on this evolution toward favoring the worst content, the most destructive, most dangerous, most outrageous content. That's how the machine works. That's how Big Other works. Because Big Other does not care about us. It doesn't care about our political persuasion. At the end of 1984, when Orwell is writing about Big Brother wanted to dominate Winston's soul. It wasn't enough that Winston did the right behavior. Big Brother had to know that he dominated Winston from the inside out. That's not where we are, folks. This is not totalitarianism. This is what I call instrumentarian power. It works through the medium of digital instrumentation to shape our behavior. It really doesn't care what we think or feel. It only cares that we think and feel in ways that allow it to get the data. Right? So this is the world that our young people are living in. I call it the society of the hive. Think about a beehive. So they're reacting to one another constantly in real time. So collective behavior is constantly shaped by what one another are doing. This is how the beehive functions. This is how the anthill functions. This is the model of human society in the future if surveillance capitalism and its instrumentarian power are allowed to dominate, are allowed to thrive. Society becomes a hive. We have the people in the hive and the people outside who tune the hive, who tune the algorithms so that all the behavior in the hive flows the way that they prefer, largely toward their economic objectives. In China, some of these same capabilities have been fused with the Chinese authoritarian state's political objectives. And in China, you see a kind of future society where you have the building of the hive, but not for economic outcomes, for political outcomes, to build a certain kind of society and a certain kind of authoritarian a hierarchy of the governed and the governors. So that is one possible future, this hive society, and our children are being trained in it. So what does this mean? Can we pull them out? Of course. course we can. What do they need? They need all the things that we have always needed as young people to begin to get us to reflect on ourselves and to develop an inner sense of self. They need to build an inner world. Let me give you an example. A very important survey, I refer to it someplace in the book, but it's always meant a lot to me. There was a big survey that Gallup did with some universities, and they picked some graduates of universities, and they judged these graduates based on how successful they were, not only economically, but their sense of well-being, their sense of being successful people in their lives, and so forth. And then they took the successful ones and they asked them, what was it about your educational experience when you went to college, university, that helped you become this successful person? And they asked all these different young people this question. And to summarize, it all came down to basically one thing. Are you ready? It all came down to, when I was at school, I had, or a teacher, a professor, a mentor, who thought that I was special, who believed that I had a special contribution to make. And this person listened to me. This person helped me develop my thoughts and helped me put my energies to work. And when and asked me questions and forced me to reflect on my own answers and how to solve problems my own way. And that was how I began to build my identity and my sense of self, my sense that I could make a contribution. This is the essence of how each of us develops an inner world. So, when you hear that saying that we hear so much out there, when you move through the world of surveillance capitalism and you hear these folks talk and you hear the advice that they give you, you will hear them say to you, hey, if you have something to hide, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Right? If you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about from us. That's the kind of thing that you say, how they diminish our need for sanctuary and privacy and autonomy and solitude, because these are the spaces where we develop our inner life. My answer, and remember this, if anybody says that to you, here's the answer. You tell them, if you have nothing to hide, then you are nothing. If you have nothing to hide, then you are nothing. Because our inner lives are meant to be private. Our inner sanctuary is where we develop our sense of self, where we develop our thoughts and feelings, where we develop our creativity, not just as a mirror of what do the others say? Do the others like it? What do the others want me to do? Will the others accept me? But as a contributing creative self. Now, is self enough? Is self alone enough? No. But selves, autonomous selves, who can think critically, who can reference our own values and ideals, that's how we come together as a strong democratic society. That's how we stand together as democratic citizens and say, this is enough. This is intolerable. This violates our most basic assumptions of a good society. This violates our aspirations as a democratic people. And we stand together and we can make the choice as people with an inner life and inner values. We can make the choice to stand together because that sense of self gives us the courage to stand in solidarity. So you see, solidarity and sanctuary, our public life and our inner life, are joined as two sides of the same coin. Without our society, without our democratic institutions, we have no rights. We have no sovereign individuals. But if we are only isolated in ourselves, we have no democracy. So these things are joined together. And when they try to take away our individual sovereignty, they know that they are killing our democracy. So this is why families, sisters and brothers, friends, mamas and papas, everybody, cousins, aunties and uncles, everybody is joined together to tell our young people, you are special. I see you. I know you. I know what you are capable of. Come, let's do this. Let's solve this problem. Let's think these thoughts. Let's read these books. Let's discover our identities together. Let's go outside. Let's climb a tree. Let's do all of the things that help us restore that balance of our sense of sanctuary and our inner life, because in the end, these are resources that our young people will draw upon to create this digital and democratic century that we all want.
Estaba pensando ahora que, antes de concluir, que en la sociedad actual se da una paradoja, que es la sociedad más incrédula y la más crédula a la vez. Es muy escéptica, pero se cree cualquier cosa. Y ahora mismo esta sensación de estar siendo manipulados está siendo utilizado por algunos para rechazar todo, hacerse terraplanista, antivacuna, opuesto a todo, negando la existencia del COVID-19, etcétera, etcétera. Ahora hay una especie de corriente de contestación descontrolada, como consecuencia de esta sociedad infantilizada, que no sabía ni lo que cree ni lo que deja de creer. Yo no sé si eso le parece preocupante o no, pero esa corriente que se ve avanzar, que de pronto eso, se hace terraplanista, antivacuna, se opone a absolutamente todo, porque siempre ve detrás la mano que nos manipula.
Well, this goes back, I'm sad to say, to the algorithms. You know, if we were to take 100%, just imagine for a moment, if we could take 100% of the human-generated information on Facebook, it would not, the majority of that 100% would not be the crazy stuff, the incendiary stuff, the dangerous stuff. That would not be a majority if we could look at this, just in a fictional universe of 100% of the content on that platform at any given moment. What's happening is that the algorithms are rewarding that content. They're showing it more. They're distributing it more. So even though in an absolute sense it doesn't have a majority, in the experiential sense of what we see every day, it dominates. This is because of the algorithms. Why? Because the algorithms are programmed for engagement. Why? Because the more we are engaged engaged, the more of our experience they are taking to turn into data, and the more they are able to fill their supply chains. Trillions of data points ingested every day, 6 million predictions produced every second. You don't get those kinds of numbers without algorithms designed to maximize outrage, right? You know this phenomenon. You're on the highway and there's a terrible, well, you're on the highway and suddenly everything slows down, right? And you can't see ahead. Why has everything slowed down? And then little by little, you get to the head of the queue and you see everything slowed down because there was a terrible accident. Everybody stopped to look at the accident and maybe slowed down your movement on the highway for an hour, right? But if you're on the highway and everything is beautiful and the flowers are blooming and the trees, no one is stopping. Everyone's going to their destination. It's like that with data. The algorithms are putting those ugly accidents in our path so that we stop and we engage. And the more we engage, the more data Big Other is able to ingest. The more data, the bigger the volume, the more the nutrition that goes into the artificial intelligence, the more it can eat, the more it can know, and the better are its predictions. And so they win the economic game in these markets that trade in our futures. So this is an economics problem. This has to do with the financial incentives within these companies. We outlaw those financial incentives, we come a long way toward absolutely stopping this problem. It's within our grasp. Politics, not technology.
Terminamos ya, Susana. Bueno, este libro fantástico que tenemos aquí, que es por un lado como un cañonazo de advertencia, como una sirena de alarma, pero es también como una llamada a la movilización democrática. Lo he entendido así. Finalmente es una invitación, digamos, a reaccionar democráticamente. ¿Es así?
I'm so pleased to hear you say that, because that is exactly my intention. There is a powerful phenomenon here, and I try to unveil so many aspects of it that have been hidden from us, so that we can be empowered, so that we stop feeling helpless, so we stop feeling resigned, so we stop believing what they tell us, that this is an inevitable feature of digital technology. We understand that we have democracy on our side. Democracy is slow. That is not a criticism. Democracy is slow because it depends upon the conversations that we have in our families, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, around the kitchen table, with our politicians, with our elected officials. We take a little bit to mobilize, to grow. But once we do so, democracy is powerful. That is what we have to mobilize right now. The third decade. We are on the brink of the third decade. This is the decade that has been given to us to turn this around, to reclaim the digital century for our lives and for democracy. That is the work now, and thank you so much for the deep and careful and thoughtful reading of my book, because that really makes me feel like all these years have been worthwhile, and I'm very grateful for that.
Susana Simboff, muchas gracias, ha sido un honor. Un saludo desde
Thank you so much. Thank you. Saludos y gracias a todos.
y media, hasta las 11 de la mañana.